I'm going to show you how to use a single action airbrush gun. It's fairly easy if you're a beginner, if you're using this type of gun. It is pretty much just point and shoot. So all I'm doing is just aiming it at the paper and pulling the trigger back. And what this does is it releases the paint out at the end and sprays onto the paper. I think I have my PSI set to around 15 for this one, if I remember rightly. With single action airbrush guns, you can only kind of get one sort of thickness. So depending on how far away you have your gun from the page, or if you have it quite close, whether it's on a model or a piece of paper, you will only kind of get one type of thickness of your lines. But like I discussed in another video, these guns are great for if you're just doing an all-over base color, or you're just, outlining something and it doesn't need a thick to thin line. I did use more of a watery ratio with my paint for this, just because I was working on paper. If I was working on skin, I'd probably just use a thicker paint to water ratio, so I'd add a little bit more paint in than water. So now I'm going to use my dual action airbrush to show you the different types of effects you can get with it. So you can see that you can get some really nice thick to thin lines. In hindsight, probably should have added a little bit more paint. So I'm keeping equal distance away from the page as I did with my single action, but I'm varying the amount of pressure that I put on my trigger. So not as much air is coming through towards the end. And that gives me that really nice kind of thick to thin line. I think these are probably my favorite types of airbrush, just because you have so many different possibilities and things that you can do with it. When I'm using my airbrush gun, I always press down for air and pull back for paint. Usually when I'm done spraying the paint, what I'll do is I will let the trigger come forwards again. So I'll stop the paint from coming out, but I won't lift my finger up from the trigger, so that there is a constant airflow going through it. That's just to make sure that any little bits of paint get pushed out, so there isn't any that stick inside the gun. I probably will do a troubleshooting video, so I know a lot of people who first start out have problems with the gun spitting paint out, and it is really just about how you shut off your airbrush gun when you're finished with it, and if it's clean. And you can also see that the paint does last quite a long time as well. I haven't really had to top up in between all this. I'm now refilling my airbrush gun up with a different colour. So I've used the blue, I'm now using the white, and I'm doing this at a 1:1 ratio. So I'm using 50% water and 50% paint. This is one of the Mist Air stencils. It comes in their stencil pack. I really like them for creating textures and swirls, and you can make some really amazing flames with these as well. And I'm just holding it really close to the page, pretty much flat against the paper, and spraying around the edges. I tend to use these a lot when I'm doing any sort of detail in my backgrounds and body paints, because like I said, it just adds texture and a little bit of something else to make it look a little bit more interesting. So depending on how close you hold it to the page, you'll get a really strong outline. If you hold it slightly away from the page, you'll get a softer outline. So this is what we called hard masking and soft masking. Working with stencils is a really nice, easy way into using your airbrush because, like I said, you can create so many amazing things. Layering up your stencils also gives it a lot of texture, and as well as being really broad with your airbrush sprays, you can get nice and close and get a really sharp outline if you wanted to. I think ultimately with airbrushing, it's just about having a play and a practice, and I would really recommend just getting any sort of watercolor painting pad and just having a play around with it just to see what you can do.